So we begin this episode already in progress. Now I had an old fireplace here that I removed, and originally I was just going to cover it over with these here Ikea wardrobe doors. But I decided to take advantage of the fact that I have a cavity, so I installed this Ikea cabinet framed out with wardrobe doors going around it. Unfortunately, my cavity is only 21 inches deep, and the wine fridge that I'm going to put in underneath here needs 24 inches. Hence the reason I've built out the wall. So I'm using plywood instead of drywall here, only because I'm going to be adding some planning patch concrete mix as a bit of an accent to this accent wall. That way it'll match what I did in my living room, which was build an entire concrete fireplace out of the planning patch. I'll link that video in the description, and you can check it out if you get a minute. That all being said, let's build this thing. So once I finish screwing down all my pieces of plywood, I'm going to take some gray primer and paint out what is going to be the area in between my panel boards. I'm going to leave a 1-inch gap between the panels, and this is where the planning patch concrete is going. It's not a big gap, and you could argue that the concrete isn't necessary for a 1-inch gap, but I'm a big believer that every detail matters. To mix up the planning patch, it's 3 parts dry mix to 1 part water. I'm using my wife's whisk because, she just bought it and I like living on the edge. You only want to mix up as much as you can apply in 10 minutes because this stuff sets really fast. I'm spreading it out about 6 inches wide to make sure that once the panels go on, you won't be able to see any plywood behind the panels. Once the planning patch is all dry, go back with a sanding sponge and sand off any high points. You don't want to sand too much here because this isn't supposed to be silky smooth, it's still supposed to look like a concrete wall. After you're finished sanding, take a damp cloth and wipe off all of the dust. From there, you're ready to apply your panels. In my case, I need to cut 8 of them at 66 inches, and the 2 top ones above the cabinet are 78 inches. There are a few different ways you can cut these panels, but I'm just going to use a skill saw. To get the cleanest cut possible, I'll run some green painter's tape along the line that I'm going to cut. I mark my length, then clamp a guide for my skill saw to follow. Make sure to use a board on the bottom as well, so that when you tighten your clamp, you don't actually cause any damage to your panel door. The measurement from the left edge of my skill saw guide to the inside of the blade is 5 inches. One thing I would recommend here is to have someone hold on to the end of the board you're cutting off, and don't let it fall. There's a much better chance of a super clean cut if gravity doesn't play a role here and try to wreck it. When it comes to which adhesive to use, I always use 2 different brands at the same time. I'm just doubling down that whatever I'm gluing is never coming apart. Before you apply any adhesive, take some 180 grit sandpaper and score the inside of the board. This will give the glue its best chance for adhesion. After sanding, take a cloth and wipe off all the dust. Then apply your glue in dollops all over the board without coming too close to any edges. I've leveled and screwed a piece of plywood at the bottom so that my first panel has something level to rest on. I'm starting here because I've measured it out that I'll be able to fit 5 full panels all the way up to the ceiling perfectly. The only panel to get cut down will be the one at the very bottom here. After I've applied enough pressure to the panel to compress the glue, I take a level and make sure the panel is plumb vertically and level horizontally. I pre-cut a bunch of 1-inch spacers and use them as I stack one panel on top of another. All my cut edges are going to face against the wall so you'll never see them. Always double check that your panels are level before applying the next one. I'm adding a couple of brad nails from the inside of the cabinet to help keep the panels flush with the cabinet front edge, but I'm not putting any nails on the front side of the panels. As far as the light inside the cabinet, I pulled power for that by splicing it into a wire in my crawl space underneath the fireplace. I've already made a video about how to do that, and I will put a link to it in the description. One last check with the level, and then all I have left to do is add the bottom panels, attach the cabinet doors, and slide in the wine fridge. I'll put links to everything I bought from Ikea in the description below.
Although my dad made a plain Jane wall into this stunning masterpiece, he made one rookie mistake. He forgot to put a lock on the liquor cabinet door, and I know I'm only 9, but come on, I'm gonna be a teenager at some point. If you like this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing. Hit the little bell to get notified when we put out a new video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
And at first I was just going to, there was an old fireplace here that, now I'm using plywood instead of concrete. Now I'm using plywood here instead of Planny Patch. Now I'm using no, that's stupid. Now I'm using plywood here instead of